2025 is for trusting yourself, okay? Welcome to the podcast, perhaps. 5th episode. We're going strong, over a month now. Feeling good. It's a rainy day here in Santa Maria, California, and it feels good to have rain here in California. But we're doing another podcast in February about 2025, but also gonna review 2024 a bit. I actually had the idea to do some like year-end review episodes like in the future. It was like, oh, that would be good, because I was doing a couple of those on Instagram, but I realized, oh no, I missed 2024. It's okay, there are no rules. It's a podcast, so we could just do it in February. No problem. So anyway, what do I mean by 2025 is the year for trusting yourself? Well, I have some points I want to make. I'm going to make 3 of them right now, and then I'm going to talk more about 2024, what I learned in 2024, some of my favorite things in 2024, some of my favorite things I did in 2024, and then at the end, I'm going to do an even bigger point. So tune in. Thanks for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate all the encouragement and compliments and feedback I've been getting from y'all. It's been humbling and it's just made me really happy. It's been really great. So anyway, so glad you're here. What is that, Jay-Z? You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with me. That old Jay-Z line. Great. I feel it. Now, anyway, more accurately, my first point is that maybe this whole self thing isn't as stable and secure and permanent as you may think it is. I think more accurately, this could be titled 2025 is a year of trust, because trusting yourself is a little strange when you're always changing. That's something I've really learned over the past year, is that the self, whenever you're trying to find yourself, my true self, my real self, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? It's like that is always in a constant state of change. You are in a constant state of becoming. And there's no point where that stops, where you finally become the thing you think you're supposed to be. It keeps going and going. And then you die. But here's what's also wild. Like if you believe in an afterlife, then you keep going after that too. But even if you don't, your body keeps changing, transforming into something new through this process of decomposition and decay, transforming into the rest of the world, into new matter and new forms, building new life. And your memory of you also continues to change and transform and have an effect. And so there is no point where you stop becoming. Why is that important for trust? Because I think what we get afraid of is that I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I should be doing better. I would be doing better if I were to get my shit together. If I were to actually do all the things I think I'm supposed to do and finally be the person I'm supposed to be. It's like that holds us back so much and keeps us in fear so much. I think what's more freeing and more confidence building is being able to acknowledge, no, I'm in a constant state of change. I'm always going to be changing. As I'm thinking of all the ways that I would like to change, first acknowledge I am changing no matter what. Because I think we often feel really stuck too, of like, oh yeah, I'm just being lazy. I hate that word. It's not a legit thing. Shout out the author Devin Price for her book. What is that? It's on my shelf. Where is it? I think it's called Laziness Doesn't Exist. Yeah, Laziness Does Not Exist. That's a really good book. Check that out. But we get scared of like, oh, I'm just lazy, or I'm just like unmotivated. I'm not doing as much as the people around me. I'm just not changing and I want to change. But you are already always changing. You just have to pay attention. Perhaps a better question. Perhaps a better question of how can I change is a better question than how can I change is how am I already changing? What are the little ways that I'm already evolving? And maybe it's in a direction that you don't want. That's another good question. What direction am I changing in? Not how can I change, not what can I do to change, but rather what direction am I going? What direction am I changing into? Is that the direction I want to keep going? No? Then let's go over there. Or let's try doing something else. And we'll get more on that point too in a bit, on doing other things. But I think the big thing too in this conversation of trusting yourself is we get into the topic of self-love, which also is a little tricky, again, because there is no permanent, unchanging, stable, solid self. I mean, some traditions may even say there's no self at all, or the only self that exists is one whole self that everyone in the world shares, that the all creation shares. We're not going to get that deep into that conversation. But I think what we know for sure is that there is no stable, permanent, unchanging self. And so loving yourself, I think we need to refresh that conversation with this perspective as well. It's like the self that you think you need to love is really you just clinging on to different characteristics of yourself and contracting them together and saying, this is the self that I need to love. And it's usually you identifying with things you've done or things you think about yourself or things other people have said about yourself, clinging on to them and saying, this is the self, and I'm having a hard time loving it. When I think the beginning of that journey of love and loving yourself must begin with letting some of that go, realizing I'm clinging on to way too much and identifying with way too much. But secondly, I think that the biggest hurdle to loving yourself through this gradual process of learning that is learning to love the part of yourself that has a hard time loving yourself. I think so many people, it's like that's the final big hurdle, right? I'm thinking of like that meme or that old comic of the guy going through the tunnel with I think, what is it, like a sickle going through the tunnel, almost to the treasure. And then he gives up at the end and walks away. But he only had to go a little bit more. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but I'm thinking of like something like that, of like, this is the big, final, hardest obstacle is right here before you're set free. I mean, of course, there's no moment where you're fully free. This is a thing we're always learning. But I think that's such a big one is, are you willing to love the part of yourself that doesn't love yourself, that has a hard time loving yourself? Are you willing to embrace that part of you? That's what I'm learning for sure, as I'm talking about 2025 being the year of trusting and trusting yourself, is like, I am in a constant state of change. You, my friends, are in a constant state of change. You got to trust the process. Secondly, my second point, let's get a little bit more real. Capitalism doesn't want you to trust yourself. Capitalism would just like you to just keep trusting the process of profit. Endless production, endless consumption for endless profit. And if you find yourself failing in trying to make yourself fit into the capitalist scheme and trying to make a living by selling your labor and working really, 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 really hard, being told that if you just worked harder, you'll finally get what you need. If you fail in that journey, then capitalism will convince you to blame yourself again and again and again and again. There's nothing wrong with the system, they say. It's you. You're just not working hard enough. You just don't want it enough. You aren't putting in enough effort. If you were to just like they say, if you were to just grind more, then you'll see that capitalism works. Then you'll see that there's actually nothing wrong with the system. And that people who do find some sort of success, even if it's small success, end up forgetting what got them there, how they were able to get it, the other people that are doing the same thing that aren't getting it, and they fool themselves into thinking like, oh yeah, this is just, I did what I was supposed to do and it worked. And let me keep going. But it's like, that's something that really keeps so many people with a small imagination about how the world can be and the ways that we can change it, is those little stories of hope. Well, so-and-so made it. So-and-so worked really hard. So you just have to work really hard. That's the kind of hope we need to get rid of. Hopelessness is helpful as a tool sometimes. Of course, I wouldn't say hopelessness in everything, but we need to give up hope in some specific areas. And I'm thinking of some of that language I'm getting from the book Embracing Hopelessness by Miguel de la Torre, which is also a great book. But it's kind of the same idea. Or it's like we continue to fool ourselves into blaming ourselves and thinking I am the problem and I just need to work harder. And we need to give that up. Capitalism, like I said, doesn't want you to trust yourself and to just keep blaming yourself for everything. But there's another way. Like we need to see a whole revolution of values of people realizing, like, no, there's actually something wrong with this system. There actually can be a different way of living, of organizing ourselves, of structuring society and the economy. We should listen to those parts of ourselves that are really struggling with making it in this capitalist world, and listen to others who are really struggling to make it. Listen to that part of ourselves and part of our communities. Understand, no, we can do things differently. So that's another part of trusting yourself. Now, next point. You learn by doing. You learn by doing because your body leads you. It leads you. It's like there's a lot of talk about mindset these days. There's even people who have the occupation of mindset coach, and or the constant talk of like, you just need to shift your mindset, just change your mindset. And there's definitely validity to a lot of that. But when it's not paired with work of embodiment, then it's pretty much bullshit. It needs to include the whole self, the whole body, your entire existence. We need to be more holistic here, not just talk so much about minds and changing your mind and learning more to have different ideas in your head and convincing ourselves that is what will push us to make changes we want to make. Is that I just need to learn more, I just need to read more, I just need to study more. Then I could put myself out there and I just need to learn all the different ins and outs and perspectives on this political topic before I actually advocate for anything, before I actually speak up about any sort of struggle that people are going through. I need to learn everything about it. And until then, I need to be completely silent. That just keeps us stuck and silent. Or I need to learn everything about this certain skill or job that I want to get into before I try it, so that I don't embarrass myself, or so that I don't fail immediately or fail at all. If I can have all the right ideas in my head about it, then I won't fail. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. It's not how it really works. Learning, of course, is important. But again, we're talking about being holistic here. You need to also do. And you learn so much, maybe, dare I say, so much more, by actually just doing and learning on the way. Learning as you go. And that's something I'm really learning over this last year. And really what I'm learning through this podcast, to be honest, by doing this podcast. I was thinking about this podcast for a very long time before I started it. And there's a lot of different projects that I've been thinking about that I haven't started. And I'm working on a book right now that I've been kind of stuck on. It's been taking me way longer than I thought it would. And I find myself just getting stuck, overly researching, reading about this and that and this and that, thinking I need to know everything about it before I can write about it, or before I can, so that I could feel confident in doing it. But I keep coming back to again and again, you learn by doing. And mindset shifts may serve as like mindset shifts alone may serve as a little boost at the time. But you'll find yourself realizing that it doesn't last again and again, because your body is what leads you. Like, you may be stuck in some of these patterns and habits that you're not pleased with, and you would like some sort of change in your life. And then you read about all the reasons why some of your bad habits are bad, and read all about the benefits of making some of the changes you want to make. And you're trying to get that solid understanding in your head so that you can have the motivation to change. And then what happens is you end up going back to what you used to do, because that's what your body is used to doing. Your body will always seek to protect you. And one of the ways it tries to protect you is by keeping you as stable as it can. And so you may be telling yourself in your mind, like, oh yeah, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to lock in, as they say today. But ultimately, your body will just go back to what it's used to keep itself safe. And so it's a process. It's a process of practice. You learn by doing. And like I said, this has been something I've been learning for a while, but I'm still stuck in a lot of different areas. I know all the right answers for getting unstuck on my book right now. I know all the right answer, all the tips and strategies and methods for getting unstuck and philosophy behind it. I could do a lot of podcasts. I could start a podcast just to talk about that, about creativity and getting unstuck and getting out of writer's block and everything, because I have all this information and knowledge and advice and wisdom in my head that I've learned to try to get myself unstuck. But ultimately, what's going to help me in the long run is practice. So I'm practicing, and it is helping. It's not as bad as it was like a year ago. And this podcast, the existence of this podcast, is one of those ways that I'm trying to practice. Not overthinking so much, not waiting so long until I feel confident enough to start doing something. Instead, it's like, no, let's just start this thing week by week. Let's just keep doing it, and you'll figure it out. You don't have to know all the right answers for how to format this yet, how to promote this yet, how to make it work for yourself and for people listening yet. Just get started. We'll figure it out on the way. That's been the spirit of this podcast. I was also unsure about this episode, because leading up to me recording this today, there's the Thursday, the day before this podcast comes out, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about. And so I was getting scared and feeling like maybe I should skip this week. But then I'm like, nah, you gotta put this stuff into practice. Just go with it. And then I thought about it more and realized like, oh yeah, I know what to talk about. So you learn by doing, friends. And I have another point I want to make, but before we get there, I want to talk more about 2024. Because all these things I'm talking about has been major lessons I've been learning through 2024. So let me talk a bit about some of the things I did in 2024. Some of the events I went to. Because that's what's been interesting too is like I hadn't really posted much throughout 2024 on my YouTube or Instagram or Substack, these places that people have come to know to check for the latest stuff I'm doing and the work that they have gotten into and watching my videos or reading my book, reading articles. And I felt bad because I was feeling like I let them down and like I was losing some of the gifts I had and I was just overthinking a lot. I talked way more about this in the first episode of this podcast, by the way. So go check that out if you want to hear my thoughts on that even deeper. But these events that I went to several events throughout the year that I spoke at and was on panels for. And so it was a little strange thinking through the year, there would be times where I felt like I'm not doing anything. Like I feel like I've disappeared from the world. Like people don't know what I'm doing. Maybe people think that I don't care anymore, that I don't want to do this work anymore. But at the same time, I'm like going to these big events every few months to speak. And so that was kind of a mind trip. And I had to like really reframe and check myself and realize like, no, you have been doing things, Damon. So stop guilt tripping yourself and stop being like that, bro. And some of those, let me talk about some of those events because my participation in some of these events has also been a major reason that I've been learning to trust myself. And so in February of 2024, I went to this event called Content Warning in Portland. It was the first of this event that they've done, led by the Thereafter podcast and the Go Home Bible You're Drunk podcast. These podcasts that are pretty much in the ex-evangelical deconstruction online world. And that's kind of like the people that they invited to be a part of the event and other people who have podcasts or just do some sort of work on either online or in books to talk about deconstructing evangelical ideas and talking about a more healthy way forward. And some of them are like leading people to a different, healthier Christianity or a different, healthier spirituality in general. Some of them are just trying to help people who want to just walk away from religion altogether. And so there's a good spectrum of perspectives there. I was the guy, I think the perspective I brought was helping people have like a healthier Christianity or any sort of faith really, because I'm like really into like liberation theology and these more justice oriented perspectives of Christianity and bringing that out through the stream that has always existed throughout the history of Christianity. And so that's been my thing. I mean, I have a book called The God Who Riots, Taking Back the Radical Jesus. So that's the perspective I bring. And it was all panels, panel after panel. And the big theme of the event was deconstructing purity culture. Purity culture, for those that don't know, is this term from it's really, I was going to say a term from evangelicalism, but more so a term from the critics of evangelicalism, really putting together multiple teachings and cultural norms and philosophies and interpretations of the Bible all together to say this is purity culture, which really is about this anti-sex, LGBT people, anti anything that challenges the cis hetero patriarchy, really, which is like in traditional nuclear family, anything that challenges the traditional nuclear family. And a lot of people know it as just like don't have sex until you're married, and when you get married, it has to be to one person of the opposite gender, and it's just like a lot of people have horror stories of the way that way of thinking about things was used to mess them up, really, through like legit abuse, spiritual abuse, also sexual abuse, with the philosophy of purity culture. And just a lot of people, have really bad stories. And that's one of the reasons they left evangelicalism. And so we got to talk a bit about that. And there's a lot of conversations about a more sex positive approach, both within Christianity and outside of it. And just, challenging patriarchy, talking about the colonization ideology within purity culture. And so, that I was a part of that, and it was fun. It was really cool to be a part of those conversations, especially looking back at like how I used to be an evangelical minister. And that event was like, like unimaginable to my old evangelical ministry peers. Or they would just see us as like just a whole bunch of demons on that panel. It's such a different world, but I'm so happy to be a part of this different world where we can have these bigger conversations and not be so scared. And so it was really awesome to be a part of those and be on those panels and put together some thoughts for those panels and do well. I felt like I did really well, and people there said I did well. And that was like a big confidence boost, be able to realize like, oh yeah, I got this. Like I'm in this. I got something to say still. And then in July, I went to this conference for the ELCA. The Evangelical Lutheran Church of America is a Lutheran denomination, but they're not evangelical. It's just an old name. It's complicated and annoying. We're not going to get into that whole lore, but I just wanted to clarify that. But the ELCA is really like the progressive Lutheran denomination. And so I met some people who are part of that and work for them. And they asked me to be one of the speakers at their young adults conference, which was really cool and interesting because this was a very churchy type of thing. Well, it was at a big convention center, but everyone there were people who went with their churches, and they're all Lutherans. And it was just different. Like I'm not used to that environment as much anymore. And so really it was a youth conference that they would have every 3 years, which were, I think, just for high schoolers. And in 2021, they didn't have the youth conference because of COVID. And so because the youth conference is every 3 years, that meant that some of those youth would have missed out entirely on going to the youth conference that they've been waiting for to be old enough to go to. So because of that, this last year, they decided to add on a young adults conference as well as the youth conference. And so I wish I remember, but there's thousands. I wish I remember the exact number. There's thousands of kids there for the youth conference. And then I think there was like 400 there for the young adults conference. And then I was there on the last day to do a talk on the whole theme of the event was created to be blank. And each day was a different word there. But the day I spoke was created to be disruptive. And the other homie that spoke was my friend Kevin Garcia. And we both killed it, to be honest. We did great. Another confidence booster. That felt really great. And I hadn't done a talk in a long time either. Like put together a whole talk and gave it to this group of people. And I thought it went really well. And so it was, again, an experience of, I got this. Like, I got something here. This worked out. I'm doing things. And it was a great experience being with all those people. And lastly, I forgot about this. There's this other event. I forgot about it because I didn't speak at this event, but there was this other event in New York that I went to with Auburn Theological Seminary, which was like this storyteller writer retreat type of workshop event thing. And I got to go for free because the seminary paid for it. And well, you had to apply and fill out this whole thing about yourself and your work. And whoever got accepted got a whole trip paid for. And my friend Heidi told me about it. I was like, we need to go to this. I didn't know anything about it. She did. She's like, let's both apply. And then I got in and she didn't, unfortunately. It was really sad and kind of awkward because it was like, what are they looking for? Why did I get in and not her? I don't understand. And also, this is awkward because you're the one that wanted to go to this. So I went. I was by myself. I didn't know anybody. But I actually had a friend that was a part of a similar workshop across the street put on by the same people. But so I got to talk to her. That was really fun. And yeah, I made some good connections with some people there. And it was I don't know, it was kind of weird and different for me because I'm not used to being in community with other writers and storytellers. I mean, I have my community here of a lot of my local artist friends, but people who are like writing about like theology and politics and stuff that I usually do. I have a bunch of online friends, but being there in person, it was very different, and it was cool to be there. And like I said, even there, I was thinking like, I don't know why they chose me, but I just got to roll with it, you know? I just got to roll with it, trust it. But I had a good time there, and I had a good time in being in New York. I got to go back to New York. Remember in one of the previous episodes, I said I noticed in my Instagram analytics, there's a lot of people who follow me from New York. Shout out New York. Let me know if you're from New York. We got to go. We got to visit. We got to hang out. And lastly, the other event I went to was Theology Beer Camp, which where was that? That was in Denver, Colorado. The elevation killed me. I talked more about this, by the way, in the first episode as well. But yeah, that was another event where I went in feeling kind of strange about myself. Especially because I hadn't posted much and I hadn't promoted the event much. And that whole event is with other creators, like podcasters and writers. And so even more so, I felt like, do I even deserve to be here? And again, it was another event where I realized, oh no, I do have something to say. I do still got it. I am making great connections, making a difference, you know? And so, and again, I talked way more about this in the first episode as well, about like some of my feelings about it and how they changed. But it was affirming, you know, real affirming, and helped me get out of some of those insecurities going to these different events, especially during this year where I was hardly putting out anything in the world. And gave me some of that confidence I needed and some of the encouragement I needed to start this podcast as well. I was talking to some of the people, this was back in October. I was talking to a few people about how I was going to start a podcast soon, and they were super stoked for me. And I was even saying like, I'm thinking of doing it by myself, just me, solo podcast, which is a bit of a risk. And they encouraged me. Sorry if you're hearing squeaking on the bottom, rain on my shoes. I told y'all it's raining. I wasn't lying. But they encouraged me. And I really appreciated that. Shout out specifically my homies Joel and Lucas and Kristen, who really, I met at the Theology Beer Camp before, but they've stayed a good encouragement. And we're excited for me to start this podcast. And so Yeah, big thing that I keep saying here is like realizing you're good, you got this, and you don't need to understand it. That has been a humongous revelation for me over like the last few months, really. It's been a big shift of stop trying to figure out why people like you. I mean, this comes from old patterns, trauma, coping mechanisms from childhood that I learned over time, where I feel like I need to figure out why people like me so that I could do more of it, so that I can avoid losing them. That's some deep stuff right there. And we could do a whole episode about that. And I know a lot of you out there would relate exactly with what I just said, which is really why I'm getting into it, because I want to let y'all know some of the things I'm learning to help some of you out in your own journey. And so a big thing I've learned is like, you don't need to understand it. Yeah, you got people that love you. You got people that support you, that encourage you, and you don't need to understand why. And here's the other thing, my friends. I'm telling y'all need to do this too. Realize that people like you. Not everybody likes you. That's never going to happen. But there are people that do. And you won't understand why. Here's another big thing. They, in actuality, don't even understand why either. We don't know why we are gravitated to certain things. We don't know why we like the people we like the things we like. It just happens. Again, I think it's one of those things where your body leads you. There's something about it, something about the sensation that happens within us when we gravitate towards certain things that we just want more of. And we come up with reasons why we like the thing after the fact. It's justification after the fact of why we think we like those things. But those reasons come after. It's a feeling at first. And those feelings those thoughts and reasons might not even be accurate. It's just, you're just kind of guessing. You just know you like it. You just know you like them. So people like you, and you won't understand why, and they won't either. Nobody can. It's just, you just got to accept it and roll with it. Has been a big thing I've been learning. And that goes into why this year is the year of trust, my friends. Just trust it. And we got to get into this if we're talking about 2024. Some of my favorite movies and music throughout 2024. Let's get deep, my friends. For those that don't know, I'm very much a movie nerd and a music nerd, mostly a hip hop nerd. I don't really talk about it much like online, like on YouTube or Instagram or my podcast really, but I have every now and then. But I always felt like the work I'm doing is about like these specific things, like about spirituality and politics or society. And that's what I do. And so I always felt like if I were to randomly talk about my like movie and music opinions, then it would just be uninteresting to people, or they wouldn't care, or it just would be way out of left field that people would be confused or just check out. But that's the other thing. Like starting this podcast, I want to be able to talk about more broader topics and just be me, you know? And so some of my favorite movies, first off, I was going to name my favorite movie off the bat just because I want to talk about it immediately, but let's save it. Let's talk first about I Saw the TV Glow. Woo! Oh my goodness. I Saw the TV Glow was an amazing movie. Such a different movie as well. I Saw the TV Glow. This guy, by the way, I'm not going to remember the character names for any of these movies. I suck at remembering those. But this guy, the main guy, this boy, is a teenage boy who gets super into this TV show, and it's set in like the 90s, I think, and it's dang, I wish I remember. I haven't seen the movie since I watched it in theaters. But what was this show called? The Pink Opaque. That's what it's called. But it had a very much like kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer feel. Charmed, like Angel, like those old supernatural type of TV shows. And he meets this girl who gets him super into the show, and he becomes obsessed with it, and it becomes this symbol of hope for him in his lonely life, where he feels very misunderstood and very like he can't find his place. And that's why he becomes obsessed with it. And looking back at it, it's like it reminded me a lot of my childhood at different TV shows I got super into. And even like there's a scene where the girl has this book, the episode guide. It's a physical book where you just flip through it and it's just a description of each episode, which sounds so foreign to today's world where everything's on streaming. Like it doesn't even make sense why that would be a thing. But back in the day, when you could only see a show when it came on cable, people wouldn't start at the beginning of a show. Today, it's like, why the hell would you start in the middle of a show? You have to start from the beginning, duh. But also TV shows have evolved more to be more, I forget the term, but to be one long story instead of a serial drama where it's a new story each episode. And back then they had to make sure it was that because people would tune in randomly to a TV show. And so they would only be able to watch it on cable when it came on and then catch up through reruns, which would be scattered episodes of the show. And so a lot of TV shows would put out episode guides in a book form so that you could buy the book and see and catch up on the lore of the show and make sure you know everything going on in the show. And then you would eventually see each episode through reruns. And that was such a blast from the past. Seeing that, just that alone, filled me with so much nostalgia. It was like, whoa, I remember that. And so that was like a cool nostalgic movie there. But also I don't know if I should spoil this. It's been long enough. There's also a huge metaphor for the trans experience. And I'm not trans, but the thing they really press on is this experience of being unable to find your place and figure out who you are, who you feel like you're supposed to be, and out of fear, just falling back on this small, false version of yourself. And not wanting to take the risk of discovering who you really are. And that's all I'll say, because I don't want to spoil the whole thing. But that experience goes beyond the trans experience. And so me and my two cis male friends went together and we were talking about it for hours afterward and talking about how this is a larger experience as well. And we even talk about that of course that can happen. Look at The Matrix. The Matrix is also, the Matrix is way more subtle of a trans metaphor than this movie. But because even I saw the TV glow was filled with trans flag colors, through lights, throughout the whole thing. But you could also still miss it. It doesn't straight up say that's what it's a metaphor for. You could still miss it. But anyway, The Matrix was way more subtle, but we're we all relate with The Matrix. And that's by the creator, the Wachowskis. They said that that's what they were doing, of course. But let's move on. I'm trying to get through all of these that I want to talk about before this episode ends. But I saw TV, Piece by Piece, the Pharrell movie, the Lego movie. I cried, my guy. I cried during that movie. And I knew I would cry when I saw the trailer. And I think it's just any creative person. Maybe any person would get choked up watching that movie. But I think especially creative people who can relate to this journey of like trying to find your giftings and live it out and not be swayed too much by other people's opinions and really just rediscovering your joy in creating again and again whenever it gets lost. Beautiful movie, of course. Next, my favorite horror movie of the year was Smile 2. Woo! Smile, the first one, was pretty good. Smile 2, I thought was extremely good. And I'm a very big horror movie fan. And Smile 2 was different than what I've seen. And it was very creative, campy, which I'm down for. And just like, I don't want to spoil anything, but I mean, I'll say basically, for those who don't know, I mean, there's demons in this movie. I know some of y'all can't ride with that. It's just too scary. But yeah, I thought it was really good. Pretty dang violent and scary. I know a lot of y'all can't handle that, but it's that was the movie. And Dee Dee is my next choice. Dee Dee, favorite coming of age film of the year, was this kid set in 2008 going into high school. And that's when I went into high school. Or 2007 is when I went into high school. It was the summer before high school, this whole movie, him trying to find himself and trying to figure out like how to fit in. And he just takes L after L after L because that's real life. So that's all I'll say about that movie. Go watch that. I was going to say too, the 2008 thing. Huge nostalgia there because he was on early Facebook and early YouTube, and it's the whole layout of the website is exactly how it was in 2008. That was really cool to see because that's like a time that came and went. That early social media and it evolved over time, but like now the evolution of those things is like not as drastic. Like the beginning of those social media sites was just a whole different experience. Now the changes that are made are just so algorithm centered. And so, but back then it was a lot more experimental and a lot more creative and for creative people. And so, and for friends, it was for friends to just be with each other, hang out and talk. And so that was cool to see that captured because that is gone. Like what that was like being on the early days of YouTube and Facebook and Instant Messenger, that's gone. And now it's captured in that movie. Second to last movie I'll mention is Kneecap. Kneecap, this Irish movie, Irish, and it's also in English. These two guys born after the Troubles who become rappers. And in the movie, it's based on a true story, by the way. That was actually only a few years ago. It's a real rap group played by the actual rappers, which was pretty cool. And they did really good. But in the movie, there's this new law. I don't remember the exact details, but they're trying to like put in this new law to like have English recognized as the only official language of Irish or of Ireland. And these people who are trying to keep Irish within the culture, it's taken on this different character of a resistance to British colonization and oppression and cultural erasure. It's become a political thing to still speak Irish. And so these two guys grew up with a father who was like an Irish rebel who was involved in like car bombings and stuff. And so got that real powerful, hardcore, rebellious spirit from that. And they start rapping in Irish and start building this fan base through rapping in Irish and making people want to learn Irish. And there's all these references to like the Troubles and certain slang and words used to like insult British people. And there's a lot of things I missed that went over my head. but I still enjoyed it. It's a super good movie. Lastly, favorite movie, The Substance. The Substance. The Substance. The Substance. Favorite movie of the year. Y'all. The Substance. I don't even want to say much about it because you just got to experience it. But I will say, it's body horror would be the category for it. So there's a lot of gross stuff in there. A lot of nudity, but more like medical nudity. And I'm only saying that because I'm saying my point is just go watch it. But of course, let me put in those disclaimers for the people that can't handle that stuff. Everybody who isn't those people, just go watch it. Just watch it. Mind blowing. No. I want to say more, but I'd rather you just watch. And I guess that's I'm trying to think what I could say. Amazing movie, touching on like beauty standards and how that screws up people's brains, especially women's brains. And I thought it was really profound the way they touched on the concept of the self, like we talked about at the beginning, and the ways that we hate ourselves and battle ourselves. And it feels like we wake up day by day. Like we think about the future, like, oh, I'll do that later. My future self will do that later. My future self will figure this out. I can't do this right now. Like we have so much confidence in like our future self. And then when we look at the past self, like there'd be a day like tomorrow, I'll do this all tomorrow. And then the next day, you're now mad at your yesterday's self. Because it's like, what was I thinking? I just left all this work for me today. And this huge mess around my house, in my car, and in my life. Told myself I'll figure it out tomorrow. I just screwed myself over. My yesterday's self was a jerk. And you're just but it feels, even though you're one, it feels as if it's a different person. That's all I'll say. I haven't seen anyone talk about, I've seen a lot of people talk about this movie. I think I've seen anyone talk about that. The way they touched on that. Because that's not really what the movie, that's like part of the way they go about telling the story. It's not really a spoiler, but so good. All right, let's see. Should we keep going? We're getting kind of long here, but I did want to talk about some of my favorite albums. Let's see here. Let's do it. Let's get it out of the way. Kendrick Lamar, GNX. Great album. Yeah. The whole Drake and Kendrick beef was a huge thing last year. I'm not going to get too deep into it. Honestly, I feel like it's not really my place to give like a deep opinion on it, especially on the culture side of it. But me and my friends talked a lot about it since it started all the way until now. And we're going to watch the Super Bowl together and be like, we got to see this. We got to see this halftime show. We got to see what happens. But I really like the album. The beef, though, I feel like my opinion, I think, is different than a lot of people's opinions. I like both Kendrick and Drake. I always have. And I mean, especially because like how old I am. I'm 31. I'm about to be 32. So it's like I saw the rise of both those artists and the ways that they influenced music. And so like growing up like that, they've been part of the culture for me growing up. And then I think the thing is the beef was interesting. The songs were interesting. I think they're both great. But this was already a debate, Drake versus Kendrick, between me and my friends for years. But really what the debate was was fun music versus like deep, thoughtful, lyrical miracle music. And so it's like, then that was always the debate of like, well, which is better? Which is really what people want? Which do we need more of? And of course, Drake would be like the fun music guy. Kendrick is like the deep music guy. And of course they both do fun and deep stuff, but that's the like, what did you call it? The larger perspective of it, of how they're viewed. But then we saw this beef happen. And of course, a lot of people thought, well, of course, Kendrick's going to win easily because he's the lyrical guy. And this is a battle of lyrics. And Kendrick did win, but the final blow was with a fun song. And there was some deep stuff in there, but it was mostly just fun with Not Like Us. And it was funny, people were saying, oh man, he beat Drake at his own game. Of course, this is how he wins. He beat Drake at his own game. He pulled a Drake, basically, and put out this fun pop song. And this is how he beat him. And all I'll say is this, and then we'll get off this. Kendrick did win, but if you had to pull a Drake to beat Drake, then who really won long term? Who really won if the Drake move is what won? Which is just making this fun, catchy pop song for people to dance to. Dang. So I don't think it's over for Drake. Definitely not over for Kendrick. But I also think like it wouldn't really be accurate to say like, oh yeah, real lyrics, real lyrical rap won. No, hip hop has evolved. Music has evolved. Culture has evolved. Everything has evolved. It's different now. And Kendrick recognizes that you got to do something different now. I don't think he's trying to bring back golden era hip hop. It's over. And then GNX dropped, and the whole album is fun party dance stuff. Which I actually prefer the fun party dance stuff. Personally. I mean, I like all the lyrical stuff too, but just like what I like listening to more often. And it was funny listening to GNX where like one of my first thoughts was like, Kendrick, finally you realize it's cool to just have fun. Let's just have fun sometimes, you know? And so my older sister, who's really into like mostly older music, but she was never really able to get into Kendrick. But then this album, she loves it and she's dancing and singing the songs all the time. And so it's like, yeah, it's cool to just have fun sometimes too, which is what I think Drake's whole thing has been this whole time. And of course, there's a lot of really good criticisms of Drake as well, and the ways that he appropriates culture that he has no part in. And I think there's also good criticisms of Kendrick too, and some of the ways that he has not lived out some of the things he's spoken. And that's all I'll say about that. I just wanted to give that disclaimer for the people who think I'm writing too hard one way or the other. That's the only reason I said that. But we're going to get off this. My only take is it's not over for either of them. And it's great to see new music from both of them, to be honest. But really, here's my other take. It's funny seeing this whole beef because neither of them, I would say, are number one. This didn't look to me like a beef about who is number one. Because this whole thing started with the big three: who's in the big three, who's number one. But like, if you're really paying attention to like the forefront of hip hop and the culture around it, they're still making great music and they're still very important to everything. But like I said, hip hop has evolved. This was Future's year. Future, I would say, already evolved past those guys in terms of cultural influence. This was Future's year. Future should have won some Grammys. I'm kind of bummed he didn't. But I mean, he put out both albums. We Don't Trust You. We Still Don't Trust You. We Still Don't Trust You is definitely one of my favorite albums of the whole year. Maybe my favorite album of the whole year. And Kendrick knew that too. That's why this whole beef started with Kendrick calling Drake and J. Cole out on Future's album and a surprise feature. Of course, I don't think this whole thing would have become what it became if it didn't start on this huge platform that Future gave to Kendrick on that album. Everyone was already tuning in to that album. Everybody. Of course, I know that some of this is like nerdy niche talk. Everyone who's into this kind of thing was already tuning in to Future and ready to just hear what he had to say. And so, and ended up hearing what Kendrick had to say. And so this was Future's year. But also, if you're really, really paying attention to the real forefront of things, we have some other artists that are starting to surpass Future, like Playboi Carti. If you really know your stuff, you realize how much the culture has shifted as a result of Playboi Carti's influence, who's probably my favorite rapper, to be honest. And then if you want to get even more to the forefront, to like the underground stuff that's like shaping the underground, we have Xavier So Based. Xavier So Based is a rapper. If you look at his stuff, it may seem like, how could you say this guy is a huge influence? He doesn't seem to have that many listeners, but he is. Like a lot of the new super internet underground music, you're seeing a shift that is all very much influenced by Xavier So Based, who's a producer and a rapper. And but you're not really seeing that sound yet in mainstream hip hop. And so my like hip hop nerdiness is usually centered around some of these guys. And so it's funny, like looking at the Drake versus Kendrick thing, it was like, oh, we're kind of going backward a bit. But also, yeah, his album, Keep It Going, Zave, was one of my favorite albums of the year. Also, I know if anyone were to listen to this album, you'd probably look at me differently and be really weirded out and be like, this is music? It sounds very weird and different. And it's definitely an acquired taste. When I first listened to him, I didn't get it, and I was kind of annoyed. Now I understand. It's one of those things. But anyway, the other thing when it comes to like the debate of is Kendrick versus Drake even relevant, is I think what's even more relevant is what the women are doing in hip hop. Come on, y'all. This was also the year of women rappers with, I mean, Doechii got the Grammy over Future, the rap album Grammy, which I think was very deserved. Doechii, Meg Thee Stallion, Lotto, Flo Milli, Glorilla, Sexy Red, and some of these not. I mean, first off, those people have taken over mainstream hip hop. Even Ice Spice. I know there's a lot of controversy there, but even Ice Spice, like, this is different. This era we're seeing right now, and that's the other thing where it's like, if you want to talk about like who really controls the culture, Kendrick or Drake, it's like you're not really paying attention. But also some of the underground stuff, like I really got into Veda and Mercury, who are from Atlanta. Like the Atlanta woman rappers right now there's something emerging there that I think is going to be really special. Also BK the Rula from Atlanta. And Veda, her album Vatrix, is one of my favorite albums from this year as well. And again, I think some of you might listen to this for those who aren't into this kind of music and also be weirded out. Like, what? Damon likes this kind of music? I like fun shit. Okay? If any of you listen to any of my music recommendations and are weirded out and be like, how does he think this is good? I like fun shit. That's it. That's what it comes back to every time. There's the explanation for anybody who listens to any of my recs and are weirded out. And then, of course, in pop as well. The women in pop are dominating this era with Charlie XCX, Sabrina Carpenter, Billie Eilish. But Brat by Charlie was one of my favorite albums as well. Phenomenal. And it's really cool to see what she's doing and the way that she's she's been a huge influence with hyperpop, the whole phenomenon of hyperpop. Wouldn't be a thing without Charlie XCX and also Sophie and other people, but it's still Brat Summer, y'all. It's not gone. The remix album was great too. And lastly, my GOAT, another woman rapper, my GOAT of this year, of 2024, was Lexa Gates. Lexa Gates from New York has a very, very different style than some of the rappers I've been naming. Not as much as the like new trap pop sound that I've been referencing, but kind of more old school sound. And I just dig her, and more lyrical than other people I've been mentioning. And I think there's something. Yeah, she's blowing up right now, but check her out for sure. I saw her too in concert in LA last year, which was amazing. So amazing. Got to meet her, got a picture with her. My life is made. 2024 was a great year. Who else did I see? I saw Blade. Shout out Drain Gang. I saw Netspend just because I had to be there for the memes. Who else did I see? I think that was it. But I saw Xavier So Based at the Netspend show. Y'all, Xavier So Based. Y'all don't realize. Again, I think a lot of you listen to this won't understand why I like Xavier So Based. Some of you may understand, but he's really changing the underground culture, is at the forefront of it. And I honestly, I think he's like 20 years old. Wait, let me see. Xavier So Based, age 21. But I was going to say, honestly, I look up to this kid, even though he's way younger than me. And at the show, I think he was a surprise guest. When he came out, and me and my friend are looking up at him on stage as he's rapping, I was so happy and excited. But honestly, this unexpected feeling came over me where I just immediately felt like, this is my big brother right here. This is my big brother. I look up to him. But really, he just inspires me in general to be creative and experimental with the stuff I do. And it's inspiring to see this kid being willing to be himself and try new things and make it change and make a difference. And that's cool. That's super cool to see when I see anybody doing that. That's my big bro. All right, that's enough. Oh yeah, the last point I wanted to make. It was a long episode, but a good one. The final point in terms of 2025 is the year for trusting yourself. I talk about all these guys and all these people, all these artists and creators and movies that I'm such a nerd about. And there's all this discourse, of course. Like all those people I mentioned get a lot of hate. All those movies I mentioned also got a lot of hate. So I'm sure some of you may tune in to some of these recommendations and be like, I don't get it. Damon's a weirdo. This sucks. But that's just part of it. That's part of putting yourself out there. Some people will hate it. Some people will not understand it. Some people will purposely misunderstand it. But here's the thing. It's just about making contributions to the culture, which is really a big shift I've been making too. Because I think there's been times where I feel like I need to fix things, or I need to fix people. I need to save people, which comes from a very Western colonial Christian culture that we're all raised in. But it's, I don't need to do all that. I don't need to put so much pressure on myself, and you don't either. It's really just about making little contributions, little step by little step, and being able to make another contribution after that. Because you'll make a contribution. Some people will get it. Some people won't. Some people will get this episode. Some people won't. Some people will tune out, I think, probably halfway between this episode and be like, what is he talking about movies and music for? That's okay. Others will listen to the whole thing. That's okay. That's great. And then we move on to the next episode. I'm just making little contributions. Not everything has to be the thing that fixes things, that solves problems or whatever. We're just making little contributions. And the little contributions over time is what make a real big difference. So go out there, everybody, this year. Trust yourself. Make some contributions. Put yourself out there. Just show up. You don't have to fix everything, change everything, anything. Just pay attention. Tune in to what's happening around you and what's happening within you. And just trust the process. Thank you for listening to this episode. I appreciate y'all. Follow me on Instagram at whoisdamon. If you want to support this podcast, support me at patreon.com/Damon Garcia. And I want to start putting some bonus episodes up there too later. We got to do that for sure. So stay tuned in for that. And leave a review, rating, all that cool stuff. Leave a comment. I appreciate y'all. See y'all later. Bye-bye.